You're listening to Redeeming Leadership, a podcast by Project Nexus. Join us as we hear stories from leaders across Australia who have redeemed their leadership journey. Let's get started. And don't forget to subscribe in your favourite podcast app.
Hey, Richard.
Hey, Tori, how are you?
I'm really, really good today.
That's really good.
Yeah, we're sitting outside at Richard's house in Queensland.
Yeah.
And it's gorgeous and the sun is shining. There's all manner of wildlife around. And
We'll probably hear a kookaburra at some point.
I hope so.
Or a flock of lorikeets, if this is still going in about 45 minutes.
Well, and you never know,
Is
do
it a flock
you?
of lorikeets?
I don't know, Richard. I'm from America.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I don't know what a collective noun of lorikeets is.
I don't know either. But it's a beautiful day, and I've been really looking forward to this conversation. I'll be totally honest.
Me too.
Yeah, so it's episode 2 of Redeeming Leadership, and our first guest is not a guest, but is a co-host.
It's me.
It's you. So we
Okay.
get to talk today about some of your leadership journey
Yeah.
and what's been a significant challenge, but then how that's turned into something fruitful, like how God has redeemed that experience.
Sure.
And positioned you so that you actually have been able to maintain a hope when it comes to being a leader and even the idea of leadership. I'm really stoked because it's a rich story and I know bits, and so
I'm ready.
it's a good conversation to have.
I'm ready. Hit me. Where do we start?
Okay,
That's
well,
all I want to know.
I mean, we start with, and this is interesting because I don't just want to know, like, what's one thing that's been
You want
challenged.
to know everything.
I want to know the thing.
okay,
Like,
good.
I want to hear about the, penultimate. It's so
My
dramatic.
So dramatic.
No, but I want to hear about, in terms of your formation as a leader and as a person, because you literally cannot separate the two.
Sure.
What has been the significant challenge for you that you've had to grapple with as a leader that
Right.
has shaped now how you lead and even how you think
I
about
felt way more
leading?
comfortable with these questions when we were going to interview someone else.
I know. Well, the time will
It's all
come.
good.
I
I'm
will
good.
be next.
Okay.
I will be in the hot
Episode 3.
seat. Yeah, episode 3. Get psyched. But this is
The Tory Green story.
we get to explore.
Okay.
And honestly, really, if we're being really honest, what this is, and maybe this takes some of the pressure off, this is like, it's kind of your testimony. Like, you're just testifying. This is your experience, bits of your story. You are a storyteller.
Sure. Thank you.
And also just like giving God glory for the way that he takes things that the enemy means for evil.
Sure.
Because really, I think probably what we'll hear is like, this could have probably been your undoing. But instead,
You might hear it was my undoing, but I'm going again. How about we just start?
let's go.
Because I feel like we'll end up doing the overview and
Yeah,
we'll
we
never get
will.
to the details.
We will. Okay, so Richard,
Yes.
can you just begin somewhere?
Begin somewhere. Leadership starts... leadership starts early, doesn't it? But anyway, look, I go to Bible college when I'm 19. There's a initial decision
Okay.
that is made for me. Not made for me. Let's own that. I made that decision with God. And I found myself all of a sudden in a role, a student role to start with, but a role within a church. And from the very beginning, I wasn't sure I was the kind of leader that I saw around me.
From the beginning.
From 19.
Okay.
Like, from the minute I walked into my first staff meeting.
Okay. And
was
that
like-
wasn't just first day jitters. That wasn't.
No, that was like me asking a question and being looked at with a blank
Okay.
face or that's strange or that's not. And so I, from the very beginning and from the very first role probably, was wondering and asking questions about how I fit. I felt very young at Bible college. I was 19. Surrounded by a lot of people who were, had been lawyers, had careers, had done all sorts of other stuff, and are now decided to go to
Right.
Bible college, and
Okay.
people who had already done, a degree in something else and were now doing a
Yeah.
graduate diploma in theology, or people who were, I perceived to be exponentially smarter than me.
Okay.
And therefore, by definition, I assumed exponentially better at whatever it is we were training to do. And also then realizing after the first few years that what I was training to do was not actually potentially the job that you do anyway, that there was a disconnect
Between the education.
correct, the training and exactly what the job was,
Okay.
the leadership needs within the role,
Right.
that there's a disconnect. Now, I hear that in lots of
Yeah.
degrees, like teachers tell me that all the time, that's a reality, but realizing that I wasn't necessarily being equipped to be a leader, I was being equipped to know information
Okay.
that I could then, I guess I had to work out how to apply in real life and in context. So, it'd be funny. I think if you asked them, well, I know you talked to my mum the other day, like she said she doesn't know where I came from. And so the person I am today, she recognizes, but also doesn't know how it happened.
In terms of family of origin stuff.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
she would have, there was not a, I wasn't some kind of leadership prodigy at 6. Like, do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it wasn't a kind of, so, it more, for me, the leadership journey comes out, every mark of my leadership journey comes out of necessity.
Okay.
So I'm so driven, in the words we would use at Project Nexus, by a compulsion that the Spirit has laid on me that I can't escape. And trust me, I have tried.
Okay.
I have tried
Yeah.
to put that to death
Yeah.
and said, God, please do not ask me. Please let me just be anything else but what I need to do. And the problem is to follow that compulsion has at every single step demanded of me that I lead.
And what is that compulsion?
Well, I think most recently in one of our incubate cohort for our leaders, my most recent definition of my compulsion is that I'm compelled to wake people up. And what I mean by that is I'm compelled to help people take their faith extremely seriously and realize that God's alive and well. That if Jesus is who he says he is, everything changes, including my entire life, all of my choices, what I go
Right.
after, what I value,
Yeah.
what I put my energy into.
And just to be clear, when you say
Yeah.
take it seriously, you don't mean sober-minded. I mean, there is a soberness to
it
it, but
demands action. It demands actually what many will call a foolish life. It demands
Yeah.
countercultural decisions.
right.
It means doing things that other people just think is just, but that God makes things very clear. And so it's the lived out application of faith. And I'm to the point where as much as at times in my leadership journey that's hurt, I've perceived that hurt me. I'm skipping ahead. That wasn't what hurt me. Other things hurt me. I'm happy to unpack that. But I'm still compelled. And therefore, to follow that compulsion, I have to lead.
Yeah.
I've wondered if God could maybe just allow me to sit at home and like write books and
yeah.
songs and ship them out into the world, and then know under a pseudonym. Like I'd quite like to have a ghostwriting name.
Yeah.
Just disappear into obscurity. Like I often say, I'd quite like to just make apple cider and build guitars for the rest of my life in a shed, and nobody know who I am.
Right.
Like that. If that's so, when we talk about compulsion and passion, like that's passion. I'd be passionate about that. I could very happily live the rest of my life, but I am compelled beyond that to do what I'm doing.
To wake people up,
Yeah.
which in requires proximity at times,
Yes.
right? Rather than the book or the song. Like that does have the potential to wake people up for sure.
Sure.
But in the way that
I'm
in the way
to
you
do
feel
it,
compelled, it's in context, it's in relationship,
in proximity to
in
people,
proximity to people. Yeah.
which is the antithesis of making cider and
It really is.
building guitars.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe one day I'll get to do those things. I
Maybe
have
you
a
could do
feeling
both.
I can do it now, I guess, at the
Yeah.
same time, but I mean, I'd quite like to just do that.
I don't think you would though, because you're
No,
compelled.
that's
So I don't think
the
you
entire,
would.
That's just let me say that at least,
the
even
whole-
though I don't actually believe it. Okay.
Okay, so then you talk about being hurt in the process of leadership, and that's really kind of what we're wanting to get to in this conversation is like, what is the thing that took you, what we've
What
said.
is the thing that needs redeeming and
What is
needed
the thing that
redeeming?
needed to be redeemed? Yeah.
And ultimately, I know you're after the story of redemption rather than the full story of brokenness. Like
No.
you're not. We don't want to. We're not dwelling in the. This is not an hour-long saga of the things that went wrong in Richard's life.
Or why leadership sucks.
Or why
It's
leadership
literally the
sucks.
opposite.
But it
It's-
is there was a need for redemption.
Yeah,
so
and
what
if,
is that path?
if this experience hadn't been redeemed, then it would not have been sustained.
Sure.
Leadership wouldn't have been sustainable for you, right? So
Sure.
but what is that we want to hear stories of hope, but that we can connect
Yeah.
to, because we do know that leadership is challenging
Absolutely. Yeah.
in.
So okay. So where to start in all this?
I mean, you said a word before we started.
I did, and I'm going to get to that word because that word is lonely.
Loneliness.
And but it's connected to the other word I just said before, which was necessity.
Okay.
So, the other word that is probably relevant here is reluctant,
Okay.
which unfortunately qualifies me. So I'll have to go into that now. But so I remember I've had people say that I would lead for a long time.
Okay.
People,
They saw something in you.
yeah, and call that out or name it early. I remember when I joined my last big organisation, the first national conference, someone yelled across the room. I'd never been there. I'd been in the organisation 6 months. I didn't even know everyone in the room, and someone yelled, "You'll be national director one day, Richard Sharp." And I'm like, wow, what does that even mean? And why would you say that? And what is that? Like, there's been that kind of feeling that I'm meant to be in those places, and other people had acknowledged those things. But
Okay.
it's not a desire of mine. Like, I say this a lot. It's the old Billy Connolly quote that if anybody desires to be a politician, that should immediately disqualify them from ever becoming one. I feel like that about leadership. It's like
if power is the
if
thing that you
the
crave.
role, if you really want the role, you're out. You're done, right? I don't, apart from seeing my compulsion take place, I do not want to lead. But I'm so compelled that means I have to lead. And so there's times where I find myself in, whoa,
my
bird life is kicking off here in
So
Queensland.
intense.
There are times I find myself being asked to lead by people or by places, and with hindsight, there are some of those I probably could have said. I'm not going to use the word should. I could have said, no, this role isn't the best, most effective and fruitful way for me to lead, but I will lead, but I could lead it another way. That's with hindsight. And there are others where, that was what was next, and for me to learn. So you're not going to hear me today say anything I've experienced up until now has not counted towards who I am today.
Yes.
That's the
Amen.
entire point. Even the
Yep.
stuff I would never repeat, the stuff I would never choose again, the stuff I did not enjoy while it was happening, all of that has led to
Yes. That is
That is the redemption
literally,
process.
that is redemption.
And partly it's not that, it's my attitude and understanding of it that was redeemed more than those situations. Some of those situations aren't particularly resolved. Like it's
Yeah.
not like, some of the hurt is not like fixed, but it's God has helped me understand how they can now be used for
Right.
for new things.
Right. You
And
don't.
so that's the redemption piece.
Yeah.
It's not that they weren't redeemed as far as made whole again. all
No,
of them.
and you don't look back and think, wow, what an amazing experience that was.
I recommend
either.
everybody goes through that. That would
Right.
be fantastic.
No.
But that I've come to a new place of appreciating that everything I learned in those seasons, even the ones that were really, really hard, have led me to sit here today. And whatever's
They're
ahead of
formative.
me is going to be formative for whatever is to
Yes.
come, right?
Which is part of the beauty of it, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I hear a lot of people, for a long time, worked with a lot of sort of young adults and young leaders, and I hear a reluctance of leadership.
Yeah.
Like I hear the like, who would want that?
Right.
Like who would want to lead? That sounds like a terrible option. And I understand.
Yeah.
But I've also had my season of being extremely cynical. I've had my cynicism season. That's
It's
happened.
over?
Look, never say never. But I've tried to come out the other end of it.
Yeah. Well, and let's be really honest. Part of this conversation is because we are in pursuit
Yeah.
of redemption of leadership too. We're not just sitting here like,
Absolutely.
it has been redeemed. We think every part is. There's
Yes.
an element of this, I mean, that really motivates the questions and the wanting to hear stories is like, because we believe it needs to be redeemed, not just for other people, but also
Yeah.
we're in the journey of like, what does it look like for this to be redeemed?
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
we believe in it.
And so, look, my experience was that I took very serious leadership roles when I was very young. If I'm really honest, like I was national director of Youth for Christ at
Yeah.
34. I don't know. I'm not very good. I'm very good at, but like mid 30s. I
Yeah.
was with like 86 staff, 13 centers. Like I wasn't equipped for. No one taught me. I wasn't ready for that. I didn't, and I didn't want the job. I remember very clearly. The national board chairman asking me to serve. He basically came to me and said, "The board, we would like you to take this job." And I said, "I do not want it." And he said, "We know, but that's why we think it makes you exactly the right person to take it."
Yeah.
Now, I can reflect on that. I appreciate that, and this is a big thing for me to say out loud. I think I was reasonably good at that job. But I am not a core organizational leader who does management over the new stuff. I'm wired for edge activity. I'm wired for new ideas. I'm wired for innovation. I'm wired for, and that's what I had done in Youth for Christ up until that. And I'd flourished and there was fruit. And often what happens is when there's fruit in something you do, people think you should do the next job. And so as much as anything, I've come to a point of realizing how that all ended, that role, which was with a significant period of burnout for me personally.
Okay.
Like years, not days or weeks or months, but years of, if I'm really honest, not feeling employable ever again.
Okay.
Not even, I didn't want to go back into leadership. I didn't even think I could hold a job down anymore. I thought I had zero value or anything to offer anybody in the world. I felt, and it wasn't because I failed. It was because I popped.
Well, I was gonna ask what led you to that point.
I tell of the moment. I vividly remember the morning I woke up, and I used the metaphor of every day I reached into a bag. Metaphorically, I reached into a bag to find the energy I needed to do the next day. There was always something there. And I realized one morning I reached into that bag and there was nothing in there, and the panic set in. It's like I'd run out of capacity. I'd run out of And there's lots of reasons of, like, I probably didn't have good rhythms. No one had taught me good rhythms. I didn't have much support. I wasn't surrounded by certain things now that I would say I need. Like, I know that now.
Yeah.
Like,
and you were also in a role you've said that you weren't really wired for in terms of that core
I adored the
maintaining.
organization because it was my heart.
Yeah. You cared about what
I
it
cared about
about.
its vision. And at the time, I would describe my compulsion as in alignment with what the organization was. But the leadership expression that I was then asked to do was something. Look, there's a real danger when you're a generalist, right? I know enough about almost everything to be dangerous, right? Like, and I could probably convince you I know enough about stuff, but I'd probably know enough just to be dangerous. That's how I kind of explain it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I am competent to a point where I go, well, now I don't know what to do next. And those kind of core roles of management and keeping, significant organizations, in those kind of regular rhythms is not, it's something I know how to do, but not long term.
Okay.
I run out of, it costs me. The reality is it cost me.
Yeah.
So I did a good job. The board thought I was doing a good job. They didn't want me to leave, but it was costing me. I was running out of what I needed to do it.
Yeah.
It wasn't sustainable.
Yeah.
And in those moments, I have felt isolation and loneliness because I sometimes leadership is lonely because you carry things you can't always share with other people, and it's not appropriate for you to share with other people. But I think at that point I hadn't learned how to do that well or have a secondary community or people. We talk about finding our people. I hadn't found another group where I could have those conversations.
Where you
or
could
get what
not
I
be a
needed.
leader, but you could actually
Be a peer.
Yeah.
But the right problem was I was young in a really big position. So my peers were either older people in the similar position or younger people not in the
didn't
kind of role that I
understand.
was in.
Yeah.
So I find myself, which was the same at Bible College. So this is the theme, right?
Yeah.
I'm 19 at Bible College surrounded by, 30-year-olds who are in a different life stage to me, but we're both at Bible College. Or I'm 35 as the CEO of an organisation with 50-year-olds in the same role as me. So at each step along my way, I've got potential peers, but they're not people I feel like I have the ability to connect to. So I'm not saying they're not willing. I'm saying I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Plus, I don't come from a long line of, modelled leadership. It's not like I've learnt some inherent way of leading. I'm working it out as I go along. So, the bottom falls out of my leadership. I just kind of
You hit a wall.
I hit a wall. There was nothing. There was just nothing left. But that leads me to believe that I failed.
Okay.
Fundamentally, the problem is me, and the problem is I am not a leader.
Okay.
Me equals not a leader.
Right. So
Because
if
I didn't
that,
want to anyway in the first place. So I'm looking for a good reason not to
Yes.
lead. I'm looking for an
Yes.
excuse.
And-
Anything that would help me not, I'm ready to go, see?
Yeah.
I'm a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. And it was taxing for you. And so did you think that, okay, if this is this taxing for me, and this is leadership,
I'm out.
then I'm out and I also can't do it.
I suck at it.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
it's for other people. It's just not for me.
But now you're a leader again.
Well, I'd probably say I've always been a leader, right? Even when I kind of ground to a halt, I was. It's
Right,
not like
'cause
I
it's
picked
not
it
a
up and put it
role.
down. It's not a role. It's just who
It's
I
not a
am, right?
role. But you
So-
do have a role now.
I have a leadership role again. Yes.
So what happened between that moment when you were like, I failed and this isn't something I can do,
Yeah.
and what happened between then and now?
So. Yeah. What happened?
Because that's that's a gap that needs to be bridged
So
here.
So how did I? start to say things like, which you hear me say, next time doesn't have to be like
Yes.
last time, because I've started saying that now, right?
And
But I didn't believe that for a long time.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't believe that.
No.
They have, I mean, this moment that you've described,
It could have
people
been
who are
fatal.
listening don't necessarily know your story. How long did you believe that?
7 years.
So for a lot of people,
Yeah.
that's something you don't recover from. You make a
Sure.
life change and you think, okay, and you believe that. You believe this isn't for
Yeah,
me,
Sure.
but that's not the case
No.
in your story.
So you want to know what happened?
I want to
That's
know what
you're asking.
happened from the point of that thing that would be enough for some people to actually
Okay.
write this off.
Okay. So what happens is a lot of nothing for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be really honest. A lot of complete grinding to a halt happened. Like nothingness. I burned all my holidays and my long service leave.
Okay.
I took as much time as possible to just literally,
Yeah.
just sit in the fact that I was just broken and feeling that way.
Right.
I then go through a period of mixture between anger with God, because you blame God first, because you couldn't possibly be that you weren't doing things healthily. It could only be that God led you into.
He let you get into that situation,
He
and now
told me
look
to
what's
do that
happened.
last thing, and now I'm broken. Therefore,
Yeah.
that's the equation
Yeah.
that is used. So I yelled at him for a bit. He patiently absorbs all that and asks patiently if I'm done, and I say, no, I'm not. I've got some more to say. And he says, okay, fine. And in that, my passive aggressive way. I then, to be honest, what I do is, and I'm not advising this as the process, but this is what I did. I was so desperate. I still knew in the back of my head, I knew my compulsion,
Okay.
because it was there, but I hated it. It was, this is why, like, I don't like the phrase, but it's the only way I can express it. I talk about my compulsion a bit like a haunting.
Okay.
I don't like that term, but people understand what I mean when I say it. It's like, I can't, it's there. It's like, I can't get rid of it. But I tried really, really hard. So I decided to try all the things I used to do and see if I just missed the thing that I could have done, or the thing that I loved, or
The thing that
maybe
you're
I can-
good at.
Well, I want all the passions, right? So now I
Yeah.
go back to my passion, things I just purely just enjoy, the
Yeah.
me things. So I go back to playing music live, and I go and I do an audio engineering diploma, and I start temping bowling again in a league, and I go through. I literally
So
kind of
good.
go through my late teens, early 20s. I like go through all of these things,
The things you've loved.
the things I love.
Yeah.
And kind of go, well, maybe I missed it. Maybe I gave God all this time and all this stuff, and it was maybe I could do something else. Maybe
Yeah.
and I did all that, and it was a whole lot of fun. And but then all of a sudden, I find myself driving people to the audio engineering diploma, picking people up for lifts, and trying to wake them up. We start talking about faith and life and all these sort of young adults, and we're having these powerful conversations, and I find myself naturally doing the things I've always done, right? But
Right.
now all of a sudden I'm doing it while being. So then I decide, well, maybe I'll just start a business. I'll start a coaching business, because I'm a trained coach and I've done it for years.
Right.
But I'll do it with creatives. I know what I'll do. I'll find all the
Okay.
musicians I can find. And so I start an organization called Flea Factory, a business, and I start coaching creatives, and I do workshops for musos and artists and all these kind of cool, edgy people that I kind of like. And but the reality sinks in pretty quickly that they don't have any money. So there's like, you can't build
It's a real thing.
a coaching business around musos for very long before you realize.
Not a lot of money in that.
They're like, oh, this is awesome,
Yeah.
but I can't give you anything. And I go, I've got 5 kids. I can't.
You have 5 big. You have 5 large
they're
humans.
tall humans, yes. I'm like, can't.
They
this
eat
is-
a lot, you know. You got to have.
Yeah. And I'm like, and I'd fundraised for 10 years to do my last role. And I'm like, this is worse than fundraising. Like
Okay.
fundraising was hard, it really was, for 10 years. But at least it kind of connected to like, so then I'm like, I don't know how to do this. The thing that probably throws me a lifeline in the midst of that somehow, a couple of friends of mine asked me to take 2 different roles. I step into a role with a non-profit organization in a very temporary basis. I jump on a board and I, for a very temporary basis, get asked to kind of help this organization think about how it does its things and what it does. And realize I don't want to do that job very quickly, but I realize I'm really competent in that job.
Okay.
And I go, it's probably the first time I went, I can do this, but I don't want to do this.
Right.
Like run this thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's interesting. And another good friend of me, a friend of mine, asks me if I might just 2 days a week come and help take the temperature of really to do well-being for staff.
Okay.
And within their organisation, and I realise I can do that too.
Okay.
I can realise I see things other people don't see.
Right.
I realise, and so all of a sudden I'm like, I might be employable again.
Okay.
Maybe I am employed. Maybe I have something to offer here.
Yeah.
Maybe there is actually something here for me. But now it's still me leading, but I'm trying to find my context. Right? So this is
Right.
Project Nexus language.
Not just what you can do, but what's
Where
in.
and
Yeah.
with who. So is it with creatives? No, not really. Is it in these non-profit organisations? No, not really. Is it in this sector? No, not really. So who is it? And all of a sudden I kind of come full circle to, well, it's with leaders. It's with people who take their faith really seriously and want to follow God into the edges, into new places. And that's kind of always waking people up to what God's got for them in their lives. And I'm like, no,
But
we've come full circle. I'm back to kind of what I always really cared about, and kind of had to kind of begrudgingly concede that. That was still alive and well.
interestingly, for sure. But interestingly, it's not just waking people up. I mean, you can do that. Not necessarily.
I was waking musos up. They were on.
Yeah.
They were loving life.
So you were
being
doing
coached,
that.
but it wasn't.
But this
and it
is,
wasn't just because I couldn't make money with the musos that I didn't do it.
Okay.
It was there was a piece missing.
Okay.
I started to realize there was a piece missing.
And that's leadership?
No, that's
leaders.
Faith. Yes, leaders, but also faith.
Also faith. But you can still wake. That's significant.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. But you can still wake people up spiritually in other.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, what I think is really interesting about this is that you haven't just come full circle back to that original compulsion of waking people up, and you're realizing, okay, the spiritual element of this is so key and foundational to what you are compelled to be a part of. But also, it's in the realm of leadership, which is something that was not always it wasn't something that was rewarding for you at certain points.
No,
you know what I mean?
It wasn't rewarding for me to do it in certain ways.
Right.
So here's what's really interesting. I, many years earlier, remember saying very clearly in some of my coaching sessions with my coach, and I obviously wasn't articulating it very well at that point, but I remember vividly saying, what I want my life and ministry to be about is helping other people find out what their life and ministry is about. And I remember the pushback was, is that a cop-out for you not to do what you want us to do? And I never really resolved that. But I actually think I was telling the truth at the beginning. That actually I have no greater joy in my life than to see other people that I invest in do what they have on their heart to do. Other people and other leaders are my compulsion.
Okay.
So it's not that I'm trying to not do my compulsion by just helping other people. My compulsion is other people. Like it actually is
Yeah.
Standing next to another person, helping them find out that they're super passionate and compelled by the Spirit to go and do this with their life. That's my space. That is what I'm all about. And actually, when I now look back at all that, everything I've ever done fits into that category.
Yeah.
But it's only in hindsight I work out that's the theme. I could never have told you at the time. But now all of a sudden Project Nexus appears. Well, it doesn't just appear, it gets created out of the dust, really.
Yeah.
But it's a conversation I'm having with God over 20 years.
Yeah.
People say, how old is Project Nexus? And I say, well, 3 years technically, but really it's 20 years old, because it's been building for that long. Where I get a clarity that actually, and I stop fighting. I still don't like the idea of running an organization. It still kind of hangs heavy on me, but that's because of expectations and needs of a role rather than I don't want to lead.
That's
I do
not
want to lead.
leadership.
I do want to lead now.
Yeah.
I do. That's a very big statement for me to say. And I'm okay to lead. For a very long time, I didn't even want to be seen, never mind lead.
Yeah.
I wanted to disappear. I'm not being dramatic to tell you I wanted to just make guitars and hide in a shed. I wanted to not only not have my voice heard, I wanted to be forgotten about. And I think I told you a couple of years ago, I was in a coffee shop and a leader I knew who I'd known really well for years saw me in the coffee shop. He hadn't seen me for ages. And he looked at me like I was a ghost. Like he said, Richard, like almost like, because I had disappeared so hard that you would have forgotten who I was. That was intentional. I had disappeared. He's like, it's so amazing to see you. Where have you been? And I'm like, I'm hiding in plain sight. I've not been anything right here, but I've just not wanted to be seen. Yeah. So I've come a long way now I don't want to make a big deal about being seen.
Sure.
Because I don't care. I would much rather celebrate the leaders we're finding and working with. Yeah. I'm so excited by them.
Yes.
I just want to, I will shout them from the rooftop and I will disappear in that kind of way. God knows that. He's not asking me to be anything other than that.
You say disappear not...
It's just not about me.
In terms of recognition.
Yeah.
But you not disappear
because I'm not important or I don't have a role to play.
Or not be who you are.
That's not what I'm saying.
Being who you are actually means that you're able to champion.
But I genuinely now believe that I was telling the truth all those years ago when I said my whole thing is other people stepping into what God wants them to be. And that's not me dodging.
No, but you were told that
well, I wasn't told. I was asked the question, is that, and it's a fair question, especially in a coaching relationship, is that a convenient way of saying you don't want to? It's
is it a cop-out?
It's a valid question. Yeah. Really valid, because it could be. And I didn't know the answer to that at the time. I know the answer now. The answer is no, it's definitely not a cop-out. This is actually what I care about. And so it is about the other finding their version of what I've found. Right. And me saying, let's go. I'll stand next to you while you do it. Yeah. And it may not be my thing. It may not be something I'm passionate about, but it's what they're passionate about. And I'm all in to helping them do that. What you've just said, though, that helping people find what you have found for yourself. What we talked about closer to the beginning, where God uses your experiences to equip you. I mean, that's you using your story and experience to give people what you needed and what you eventually God walked you through. Sure. And you know what I mean? That is a really full circle moment as well. Like the thing that you want to give to other people is what you have found. And I guess my entire life is marked by trying to give other people what I didn't have.
Right.
Pretty much across the board.
That happens a lot with people. Yeah. The thing that motivates what they love and what they actually how they want to
Absolutely.
serve people or where they want to invest. But you said, I want to lead now.
Yeah, I heard myself say that out loud and I immediately regretted it.
Why?
Why did you hear me say that?
Why?
That's really upsetting. That's the
I know,
one
because you
thing
said it
wanna talk
while
about.
I was talking.
No, I was hoping
It
I
could
might
have
get away
just
with
not
it.
existed, but
I
no.
was hoping I might get away with it.
You said, I want to lead now. Why?
Because if I don't, this won't happen.
What do you mean by this?
What Project Nexus is trying to achieve.
Okay.
It won't happen because this is my compulsion. And therefore, if I don't do this,
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm the only person in the world with this compulsion. I'm just saying this being done like this in this time, in this place, with these people in these ways
Yeah.
that God has asked me to consider being a part of, this specific thing
Yeah.
won't happen. Now, will he raise up something? Yeah, absolutely. I'm not raise up someone else or what? Maybe, but that's not my for me to think about or worry about.
Right.
I know that if I'm willing to pursue this, and I think we're beyond an idea now for sure,
Yeah.
where this is happening. We're seeing people gather. We're seeing momentum build. We're seeing
Yeah. Fruit.
people break through fruit.
Yes.
We're seeing people feeling really hopeful about their situations and their leadership and opportunities. And then I want to be hope filled about that. You know, we
Yes.
talk about that a lot. That we want to be hope filled leaders. That for me to live like that, I'm going to lead. And there's still parts of my job I don't want to do. I say to my kids all the time, even if you do something you love, there's still days you're like,
For sure.
I do not want to do this. That's not what it's about. No. I will lead right now because this needs doing. And I think God's in it.
And there is,
But not because I'm smart, but because God's in it, right? That's it.
and because He has equipped you.
Sure. He's shown me a lot and
Yeah.
let me see a lot.
There's something there in differentiating between the role of leadership and the posture of leadership.
Sure.
You know,
I do know. I've had the role
yeah,
without the posture. I've had the role without the awareness even. And I don't want the role. But the role is a byproduct. And sometimes a necessity.
yeah,
That's okay. But I'm not defined by the role. I'm defined by who I am and how I move in my leadership, with or without the role. And I needed to learn to lead with or without the role.
yes.
That was important.
Well, and leadership, it's not just posture, it's also a relationship. You can have the role of a leader, but if you don't have the relationships with
Sure.
whoever it is that you're leading, then it's not leadership. It's a role.
Sure. I have always, I'm going to hate saying this out loud as well. I know God has somehow equipped me with people have been willing to follow me many times. Again, and I don't think it's me. I think that's a God.
And that's
God
biblical.
God has placed this, but for a long time, I hated that.
Yeah.
I don't want you to follow. I don't. So my role, but I've come to a maturity point of realizing that that's okay if I just keep pointing people and imprinting people with Jesus.
And that's
Which
actually
is
the
biblical,
point.
right?
Yeah.
But what I didn't want to do was I didn't want to take on I didn't want to think of myself as a leader. I didn't want anyone to follow me. It's my odd, a leader with no followers, just a dude taking a walk by himself, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be a dude taking a walk by myself. I didn't want. It's the Forrest Gump going for a run by himself scene. It's my worst nightmare. You just go for a run, and then all of a sudden, just because you go for a run, all of a sudden these people start wanting to follow you running. It's my worst nightmare. I'm like, what? Can you go? I'm going home now. I'm tired. I'm going home now. It's like that scene where he does it and turns around. I'm like, that'd be me going, why are you? I didn't ask you to run in this way. But I know that there's in the way that, whether it's the way I communicate things, whether the way I don't know what it is, but it's not something I think is about me. God has asked me to do that, but I've had to come to terms with that and say, well, okay, we'll only do this if I can point them all to you. And he's gone, good, you finally worked it out.
But this is you redeeming and redefining leadership.
Correct.
Because what you describe as something that for you was really unattractive and undesirable it actually has more to do with social expectations, organizational expectations, what other people think is leadership and expect from a leader, as opposed to what you've said there about, like, you know, the imprint of Jesus and like biblical leadership and you being you and investing into other people. And that happens to look like this thing that we call leadership. But really, I mean, for me, that really does get to the heart of a lot of what we're wanting to explore here, which is now you're not just talking about the redemption of your leadership experience, which is micro and it's important and it's beautiful, but you're actually now saying redemption of what we understand leadership to mean and what we will like receive as expectations of that, because that's a different level or a different layer of redemption for me, and one that I think is so important, that leadership in the way that maybe the world or even if an organization expects it to look a certain way from you, like you get to push back on that, explore, negotiate that. What does it mean for you if you're actually going to fill that role? Like, that's a redemption piece that I think is really, really significant.
Yeah, and so it comes, you know, redemption and maturity. Are connected, right? There's an assuredness that starts to come, that God kind of builds and affirms over time as well. That you go, you know, there was a long time there I was desperate, and to have people like me
meet expectations.
The problem is often expectations aren't very clear, so you're always chasing your tail. You're often you never quite know if you've met expectations, so you just
like
keep going.
Perceived expectations or assumed expectations.
Correct. And so you're just constantly on the go, thinking that you're never quite hitting the mark.
Right, which is oh my gosh, exhausting.
Absolutely exhausting. And so, I am experiencing a new stage of freedom in that. Some of that I created for myself. I'm not. You know, it's not all been given to me, but. As you've just said, part of that is me negotiating that and me being clear about what I'm good at and what I'm not, and how I think I can lead, and being open and not being scared to say, this is not, I can't do this. Yeah. That's okay.
I can't.
But I can find some people who can, and we'll build a team who can, and we'll, you know, we'll get help where we need, and I can't be all things to all people.
Oh,
and,
yes.
You know, all of that kind of stuff. I can't be the typical hero leader who at least pretends to be good at everything. I'm not even going to pretend to be good at things I'm not good at. Just be open and say, we need to find somebody to do that. So, you know, they're the markers, I think, of what the journey of redemption looks like. And so, you know, I think it became clear to us that redeeming leadership was actually a good way of describing everything we do.
It is the essence.
It's like, and that's why we call it the podcast that, right? Because we ultimately want to redeem leadership in individuals and in individual story, but also, as you said, on that macro, you know, that level of saying we all need to think about, you know, what leadership can and doesn't have to be. Yeah,
not just the experience of it, but the thing itself and our understanding of it.
Well, look, and I've often said my biggest fear, and I said this to you, I think, the other day, my biggest fear is not a fear of failure, but a fear of success, which is so linked to the story I've just told, right? Because I don't want to turn around and find out there's 5,000 people running behind me. That terrifies me because I feel responsible. And
Yeah.
but that's linked to if I have some kind of ego to think people are following me. Like if it's me, like I'm the leader and everyone's following me and I have to have all their answers. And that's actually that's a me thing. Once I remember a psychologist saying to me very clearly, a fear of success is just a delayed fear of failure. You're just scared of failing from a higher height than most people.
More noticeably.
And if I was to sum up my breakdown, the easiest way to sum up my breakdown is I would say that I fell down in public. And there is nothing more embarrassing in my life than falling over in public. Like just walking down the street and literally falling over in public for me is like, oh my gosh, right? And some people don't care, but I'm like visible falling down, right?
Yeah.
So I describe my burnout, my whatever that moment was. The easiest way for me to describe it was it felt like I fell over in public.
Yeah.
So hence what I decided to do was never to walk in public again and walk in private. So what is the redeeming element that's happened?
Yeah.
I didn't stop walking. I just have decided to walk again in public and realize that actually if I fall over again, it's not fatal. And my leadership isn't defined by that, but more defined by will I grab hold of God's hand again and go again. But I'm not scared of falling over like I was.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm just saying.
Well, it's a big deal because there are no guarantees.
It's not inevitable that I won't all of a sudden like work too much in the evenings like I do, and all of a sudden like have no energy and like there are things I'm still working on. I'm not sitting here like some healed whole leader telling you how to do things. There are still risk moments for me, but the redeeming piece is that the fear the fear of that isn't all consuming. It just pops its head up every now and again. I have to speak hope to it.
Yes.
And say it's okay.
Yeah. And remind yourself, as you always start your prayers, remind yourself of who God is and who God says you are.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because I actually think those two things matter most of all.
Yeah.
The character of God and how he views me, not how I view myself. And I think for me if those things are true, then everything changes everything, right?
Everything, yeah.
That's like a little tiny skerrick of my story, but there it is.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, no worries.
I know there's more. There always is.
Yeah, there's heaps more, but it's okay.
But
let's not refine 45 years of life down into
no, you can't.
40-minute conversation.
But it is encouraging. It's encouraging to hear. And that's our hope for people who are listening. That you might be able to see yourself in elements of what you hear and then also be encouraged. Because if you know God, if you know the God of the Bible that we know, that's the same God, and he has the same heart for you and the same capacity to carry you and provide hope,
And next time doesn't have to be like last time. And I am different this time.
Well,
and I'll be ever thankful for that.
I actually want to modify that statement.
Go on.
Which we've used a lot.
Yeah,
but I actually think, given the fact that last time has shaped you.
Yeah.
You're not the same man that you were last time.
That's 100% correct.
So next time, even if the same situation were to happen,
it won't be the same as last time.
Next time can't be the same as last time. If you've allowed.
Well, next time won't be the same as last time.
No, it won't. It won't. Maybe that's it because.
And it isn't.
because you allow learning and shaping and growth and the grace of God and do you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not the same, so.
No. Praise God.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. Well, thank you, Richard.
Pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Always
Let's be
a pleasure.
real.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
All right. Talk soon.
Okay. Till next time.
Till next time.
It's my turn.
Ooh. I'll rub my hands together.
Oh,
now.
no. Okay.
Oh, no.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for joining us. And for more information about Project Nexus, go to www.projectnexus.org.au.